Hello, thank you for joining us today at Low 4. So today we're going to be talking about the current landscape for small music venues within Greater Manchester. We've got a number of guests with us today. We've got Victoria Robinson, Chief Executive Officer at the Met in Bury. We have Chris Horkan, Director and Promoter at Hey Manchester. We've got Jess, Coulson, who's the event manager at the Old Abbey Taphouse, and Rachael Flaszczak, the owner of the Snug in Atherton, and not to forget Gareth Worthington, who's our nighttime economy officer at CityCo and Manchester Bid. So I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit more about yourself before we dive into the questions. So Gareth, to start, what does a nighttime economy officer actually do, and what do CityCo actually do for those who've not heard of it?
I don't actually know. My history is I've worked in venues in Manchester since, well, the mid-90s, 1994, I think it was. Working through various different live music venues, nightclubs. I used to put on quite big drum and bass raves and things like that back in the day, sadly. And then now I work for a company called CityCo. CityCo is the city centre management company. It's a not-for-profit organisation that was set up in 1996 after the IRA bomb. Which was basically set up by 5 different businesses, Bruntwood, Marks and Spencers and others, to keep Manchester trading, really. Since then, CityCo's kind of changed. Obviously, I joined it about 5 years ago, and my job is nighttime economy officer, so there's 711 bars in the city centre, pretty much all of them phone me a lot, and I deal with everything from licensing to waste management to antisocial behaviour to everything. We also, as CityCo, also operate kind of the Manchester Bid. We also do the accommodation bid and the business crime reduction partnership.
Yeah.
So that was quite an answer. But
Business Improvement District.
Business Improvement District, yeah.
Okay, lovely. And Rachael?
So I'm the owner of the Snug Coffee House in Atherton. It's a coffee shop by day, music venue at the weekend. You may have heard about us more recently because we became the first music venue that was bought by Music Venue Properties. So we've now got an extra long lease and we're safe for as long as we want to put grassroots music on.
Okay, thanks Rachael. And Jess?
My name's Jess. I'm an event manager at the Old Abbey Taphouse in Hume. The Old Abbey is a music pub. We do club nights and we're really focused around mostly community work and working with the different communities that we serve. I also run an organisation called Do It Ourselves, which does promotions, bookings and events in other venues as well. And then kind of like yourselves, I imagine quite a long history of venues and festivals working in different roles.
And what styles of music do Old Abbey put on? Is it quite a wide range?
Yeah. So this weekend we've got Third Culture and Archfemesis tomorrow, followed by a sound system. Then on Saturday we've got Alt Femme Queer Clothes Swap, followed by Crin, which is like West African percussion and techno, into a club night after that.
Wow,
and
busy.
that's, yeah, exactly.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And Victoria, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Victoria, Chief Executive of the Met. I also sit on Manchester Music Commission and I'm also Chair of the Bury Bid, so I've got a link with bids there. The Met is an arts centre and music venue in Bury. It puts on a range of things, so largely music, but comedy, theatre, family theatre, and we also run a number of workshops as well.
Okay, wonderful. And it's not just a music venue, it's
it's wider than that, yes,
okay.
it's more community focused, yeah.
And Chris?
I'm Chris, I run Hey Manchester. I've been promoting shows independently in Manchester since 2006 now. I do about 100 to 120 shows a year, folk, country, contemporary classical, electronic, indie pop. And I don't run or own a venue, but I do work in mostly small venues around the city centre.
Yeah.
The smaller the better.
And how long have you been doing that?
18 years.
18 years, wow. We should have a party on the 20th, I think. Yeah. So diving into my first question, we called this panel Pathways to Prosperity. And I remember you sending me an email saying, prosperity, what's that? I don't think venues know what that word is anymore. So I want to unpack that a little bit. So the idea of prosperity and ultimately success for small music venues, what does that actually look like right now? What are you trying to kind of achieve, and is that all about the bottom line, or is it adding value to the industry and to the community in kind of other kind of ways? So maybe we could start with talking about the Snug for that one, I think.
Well, we measure success by just being able to keep our doors open and keep putting events on, keep doing what we do, and just getting by each month and paying all the bills. We obviously, we've in the music venue properties, with them owning our venue now, we're quite safe on that front, but we've still got all the obstacles that every other venues face, with licensing and cost of living crisis, funding applications. It just goes on, and it seems to be we're getting less and less people coming out at the minute. Whereas obviously the arenas and the stadiums are noting that they're selling out gigs and getting
increase.
We're really struggling at the grassroots level.
Okay. How about the type of people you get through the door, how you're engaging with the community? Do you have any metrics there on who you engage with and what's successful for you?
It's a huge age range. You can't really measure the age range. It's like 18 to 80. It's not. We have a group of regulars who come to everything that we put on. We find a lot of people want to come and watch artists like heritage acts. So you've got Mark Morris and John Brownwell, people like that. We can sell those out like in 2 minutes, but the new and upcoming bands, we're really struggling to get people through the door for that. It's just trying to build those audiences up. It's quite difficult, especially our location. That works against us, I think, as well in Atherton. So we're off the circuit, the city centre circuit.
And is that quite similar for the old Abbey then, would you say? Or?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about prosperity. For us, what we really enjoy is having lots of different artists in and having a space where people can come and share these musical experiences together. Where we are in Hume, we've got a lot of different communities there. On Thursdays, we normally have like an elders session where we have a tea party with an elderly women's group, and it's kind of for us around giving people something they can share so that everyone can get on where we are. But I think as well, in terms of if you were to look at prosperity from a financial perspective, very similar goals to yourself. Just trying to
keep the doors open.
And and look after our staff. I think that's something that's really important. With we committed to being a living wage employer. Minimum wage is going up, as I'm sure everyone's aware. And that's really impacted us in making sure that our staff are looked after and everything as well.
And I guess, Victoria, given that Bury Met is a multi-arts venue and you've got a little bit of a different funding model to these venues do, which would be great to get a little bit of an insight into, is your kind of metrics for success a little bit different?
I think it probably needs to be said that venues that are here today, they're a bit of a beacon, aren't they, at the minute? It's quite dour after over a decade of austerity, and they're much more to their communities than just a music venue. So, I mean, success for us is connecting with our audiences, properly actually engaging, but the music venues and everyone here has a job in helping to help these artists flourish and really give them a platform to hone the craft, really. So success is, I think for everyone is everything, isn't it? Everything that you mentioned, it's, connecting with communities, it's making sure you can open the doors and turn the lights on and pay staff real living wage, but also helping these people on the route to success as well as part of an ecology.
It's nice. I think that leads me nicely then to one of my other questions around the idea of music venues as community spaces, ultimately. So what are your thoughts on the idea that smaller music venues need to think of themselves less as spaces for just showcasing music, more as spaces for community in order to be successful? How do you approach that in your venue? I guess you've spoke about that a little bit already, the old Abbey. But... Yeah,
we actually have probably more of a similar funding model to Victoria as well, because we do go for different project grants and things as well. So we also do get funding and stuff as well. But I think because of the people who set up the old Abbey, we've always been, it's always been very important to us to work with our community, and we've always understood that not everybody gets a space. And we kind of got ours by really being scrappy and fighting for it, and now we have the space. We work with lots of different marginalised groups, especially, and try to make sure that that's there for everyone. And I think in terms of music and people honing their craft, the best music for me is made when those different groups come together and people share. And when you have the space and a stage to take those connections and then it becomes a performance, like that's just magic. It's I think music venues have always been spaces where people can find their community. And now that we've got the internet, a lot of young people, they don't need to go out to music venues to find the other, in my case, weirdos like me who like the same thing. You've got to like wear a t-shirt and hope somebody, you know, spots you and then you find your mates. Like that was when I was a teenager. But now people can kind of find that online. So I think part of the understanding with music venues is consciously being spaces where people can find their community, because they've always been community spaces. Yeah,
and you've started opening up the Snug as a coffee shop as well as a music venue.
Yeah, so it's
how's that work for you?
Yeah, it's great. So we get a lot of people who come out of the day wouldn't necessarily come watching live music at the weekend as well.
Yeah.
So we try and be inclusive to everybody, and it's a social place where we welcome anybody, and there's something for everybody as well. And just recognising that some people will come to the venue on their own, and we can figure out who those people are and try and get them talking to somebody else.
Yeah.
We also promote a lot of non-alcoholic drinks, and the coffee machines are always on, and we try and get people, we don't want people to think it's just coming out just for like a big booze up. We want people to be able to come and have a chat, have a brew, and like I said, just make everybody feel welcome.
So can I ask, if someone was asking for tips about how to make their music venue sustainable, would you discuss with them how they're engaging with community and creating that space, and that's important for them to be considering, not just putting the bands on kind of as a...
Yeah, I feel like you're not just a music venue.
Yeah.
You're a place where people come and feel safe there, and they feel like it's a bit of an escape. Like you've just said, you find your kind of people in there, especially if you're going watching similar kinds of genres of music. So yeah, I would suggest anyone who wants to open a music venue, then you need to have different kinds of revenue streams coming in. You need to be doing food, and then other kind of community groups, inviting people in. We have a regular night called Stitch and Bitch. We have like 25 people come to that every Wednesday night. That's been going for nearly 9 years now, as long as I've been open. And that's just a great event. So we've got music on in the background, but it's people like knitting and sewing and having a good old chat.
Interesting. So my next question is about audiences, and maybe Chris, you could have a little bit to add to this. So recent research, can't read me on writing today, is highlighting that Gen Z, so 12 to 27, do not attend as many live events as previous generations, and older generations, so us, prefer to spend money on live acts with whom they've already had a fan relationship with. Are you seeing this trend on the ground? Does it impact who you book, kind of the programming that you're seeing at venues? And do you think people are just not as interested in discovering new music in a live setting anymore on mass? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
I think this definitely is happening. I think with the kind of music that I promote, like I said, country, folk music, that kind of scene, because it's kind of naturally appeals to an older audience. I'm kind of seeing probably slightly less of an effect versus if I was promoting, NME style guitar bands or something like that. But especially last year, attendances were down, especially for new and up and coming acts versus more established ones. That's like, I think everyone agrees with that as a trend that's developing last year. It's feeling slightly better this year, but obviously we're only a couple of months in, so it's hard to say. But it is definitely something where I'm less sure about taking a gamble on a brand new act than I was pre-pandemic, especially.
Okay, it's interesting. And Victoria, what are your thoughts on that?
Same. People's attitude to risk is like terrible at the minute. People don't take a chance on new artists, but without that ticket income, it's a struggle for venues to put on those acts as well. So it's a real balance, really.
Do you have any initiatives to try and get younger people through the door? Or?
Yeah, we've got a streamer programme, and that's particularly aimed at under 25s. But
how's that gone?
It's okay. It's been the key word today, hasn't it? It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Is that been an ongoing thing?
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing, yeah.
Okay. And what's the structure of that Is that like
it's programming artists from around Greater Manchester who are up and coming, and then looking to support those artists further through the recording studio, for example, as well.
Oh, so getting them engaged in the full industry.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
I've been doing free entry events here at Low 4 as kind of a direct response to, you know, obviously ticket price is a barrier to entry, so if you can remove that completely, then that should at least remove one of those barriers to entry, and they've been going pretty well actually here.
Yeah.
And obviously you then have no ticket revenue coming in, so you need to balance it out somehow, but you know, it's that kind of thing that could help, I guess.
Yeah. And so have you been putting those events on
Yeah.
out of the goodness of your heart, just to help build the community back up, or?
I've been doing it for things like local bands' album launches and things like that, where there's kind of less pressure on the band to kind of make a good fee.
Yeah.
They just want it to be a good show and for their friends and family to be able to come.
So supporting new artists and new audiences at the same time. I like
exactly, and just like I said, removing that barrier to entry.
And did you mention that the Snug had been doing something similar? Tell me about that project.
Yeah, so we received some funding from UK SBF, so it's levelling up funding that went through Wigan Council.
Yeah.
And we put a bid in for this fund, so it's for increasing the early nighttime economy between 5 and 8 on a Friday, and the target age range was 16 to 24, and that's within 4 different towns in Wigan Borough. So we was able to choose the Snug as one of the venues, and then we've partnered up with 3 other venues. Within that funding, there was some money for music equipment for each venue, so we've sort of created 3 other grassroots music venues now within Wigan, and then we put an event on 5 till 8, and it circulates around the venues once a week. So we've got the next one is at a bar called Hideout in Wigan, which is tomorrow, and we're finding it's free tickets because it's fully funded, so all the artists and the production team and everybody gets paid through the funding, and it's free tickets, and it's up to the maximum amount every time. We keep saying sell it out, but not selling tickets, it's just registering for a free ticket.
And what age range was that?
Well, it's aimed at 16 to 24, but we're really struggling to hit that target.
Yeah.
So we're finding a lot of maybe over 50s are coming to it, because they like the fact that they can come out, watch some live music, leave at 8 o'clock and get home before the chaos starts on the streets. So it's brilliant. It's a really, really great project, and it's doing really, really well. But it's all free tickets because it's fully funded, so we can't replicate that then on a Saturday night in the Snug because we haven't got the funding to put those events on for free. So the last week we had to, I think we sold something like 15 tickets for 2 bands, which obviously the bands paid everyone, so we ran at a loss that night. This Saturday, the main band has pulled out because of an accident, so we've had to change it around a bit, so we've made that free. And we're just going to have to see what happens on the night, but that'll probably just break even.
So what do you think the reason is why this younger generation isn't coming to gigs as much? Is it because they didn't build that habit during the pandemic? They're not drinking as much money? What's the solutions for this? Is it kind of helping them create a gateway into events by these free events and kind of initiatives?
Well, the tickets are only £5 as well, so it's not like they're expensive. Yeah. It's just £5 a ticket. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's because they don't plan as much as we used to and actually plan ahead and
more spontaneous.
Plans they change and decide they don't want to go out because it's raining.
Yeah. I kind of understand that to an extent. So my next question, which you mentioned about kind of the funding that you received, this would be a great chance for you to come in about your work, Gareth, because we've not posed a question to you yet. I feel bad about that. So bear with me, it's a longish question, but government and council support. So we've had the Supporting Grassroots Music Fund from the ACA, the UK SPF Fund providing local authorities with money to support business and culture, the development of GMCA's Music Commission, which Victoria is part of. We've also seen recent lobbying efforts from organisations such as the Music Venue Trust for VAT reductions, the £1 ticket levy on larger venues to support grassroots. In terms of the place of governments and councils in supporting music venues in particular, is the current support good enough, or what solutions do you think are kind of needing to be provided?
If you don't mind, I'll jump to the last question first and then come back to this one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just on the younger ones coming out.
Oh, go on.
I did notice when we had sound control about 7 years ago, the dynamic started changing. The way they used the venue started changing quite dramatically, to the point where the gigs, the age range was getting older, and then the club nights, they were coming out much later and then going home much earlier. So it gets to the point where on the club night they'd be in for about 2 hours and then be going. I mean, I came up with various reasons in my head for this, mainly after chatting to quite a lot of them. One is the internet, when you have access to the world ever, plus obviously in our era of going out, we weren't on every single picture of us going everywhere, wasn't everywhere. And the kids nowadays, obviously, they would like to be on Instagram, and they can't be seen on Instagram drunk and say gurning, for example. Not that people do that in venues, but they can't be seen to be looking like that. They have to look beautiful. They have to go. So I was talking to these two girls. They'd been in for about an hour, and they're going home. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, "Oh, can I just ask why are you going?" And they're like, "Oh, we've got to go to the gym in the morning. Then we go to university." And it's like, what? Why? So it's like that started kind of slightly changing it. That really, and that's what kind of brought through, and what started hurting them kind of nightclubs in the city that are kind of not one-trick ponies. That's a horrible way of saying it, but them kind of generic sad nightclubs, which, to be fair, Manchester legends, things like Fifth Avenue, things like South Nightclub, you know, where it's a room with a DJ. The kids, when you have access to everything in the world ever in the palm of your hand, trying to keep somebody interested in something when it's just a DJ up on a stage. I mean, with bands, thankfully that's good, because there's more things to look at. Otherwise, you need warehouse project style things with burger vans and jugglers and all sorts of stuff going on, or venues like the Soup Kitchen, which is tiny and lovely, you know, and does everything. You're on the stage with them basically when they're playing. So it was just trying to work out different ways of doing it. But it was just talking to the kids. They just started slowly not coming. And then obviously the pandemic hit. Now my nephew turned 18 that year, so he didn't get to go out to a venue for like 2 years, really. You know, by the time he started going out, he had no clue where he was going. Didn't have a clue. And none of them knew how to drink either. So people were just getting drunk really quickly and going home, or just being nasty.
I think it's interesting to hear your experiences on that and how it's built towards the situation we have today.
Right, I'll come back to my question.
Government and council support, and not to put you in an awkward corner, given how much you work kind of with the council.
That's fine. It's well, with a bid, with business improvements in council, two different things. So business improvement districts, basically everyone, it's a legal process, and everybody within a certain defined area or defined kind of sector, basically all agree, and it's a legal vote, much like an election. And you have a vote, and everyone votes to vote for this levy. It's normally about 1 or 2% on top of your business rates, which is then collected by the council and then given to a bid. The bid board is created of members of that community, basically. So you know, on the Manchester bid board, you've got Manchester Arndale, you've got Marks and Spencers, you've got Bruntwood, you've got all sorts of different ones. And basically, the people who, so CityCo kind of manage the Manchester bid, for example. So my colleagues will then go to this board and go, right, you've got this much money that's been collected. What do you want? You know, is it street cleaning? Is it events? Is it all the rest of it? So what the Manchester bid pays for is things like the Flower Festival, which is on in a couple of weeks. We've got the Chinese New Year, so anything that's not in Chinatown, all the lanterns everywhere across the city, all this kind of stuff is all covered by that. Manchester Pride, the things that are not within the village. So when you see the rainbow flags all around Market Street, all this kind of, all the events and activations is all done via that. The Halloween monsters that you see, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's about kind of bringing footfall into the city. Now we've got the accommodation bid, which has now gone through, which you've seen as the tourist tax, as the MEN delightfully called it. The accommodation bid is going to, so that's massively helping, so there's 73 hotels currently within the bid. That's helping with street cleaning. So if you don't notice, you're walking around the city centre at the minute, the lampposts are much less stickered, a lot less graffitied.
So I think this is really interesting that you mentioned about this is funded through a levy and the benefit that brings to the city. And one of the discussion points at the moment is the Music Venue Trust kind of lobbying for the £1 levy on tickets to be taken off ticket prices at larger music venues and the money given to smaller music venues. But some people are thinking, could this type of a system work? But we're seeing this type of a system work. And we've seen it work in other countries, like in France as well. So can I just ask your thoughts on those kinds of initiatives? Like, have you, because I know you've done a lot of work with the Music Venue Trust before.
Yeah, I think at our level we just need easier access to funding, because at the minute if we're applying for Arts Council funding, it takes 16 weeks to get a decision and then you could be knocked back, which we was with our last bid. We was told we just hadn't put it in at the right time, so we then had to wait for a new pot of funding to open to reapply. So it's like 6 months until we get an answer from the initial start when we started applying for it. So everything that we planned to do with that funding, we've had to just try and get through and do it. So when we get an answer on that, you're already behind your schedule, so then you've got to try and get it done quickly.
So there's a lot of advanced planning that has to be done.
Yeah, so Arts Council obviously it's amazing that they do support venues at our level, but it's really, really difficult and it can become someone's full-time job to keep applying for funding. There's National Lottery funding, there's quite a few pots that you can go for, but it is quite a difficult process, especially when, like myself, I'm doing a lot of roles already within the venue. So I work on the bar, I work on the coffee, I run the business, booking the bands. There's just too much to do already, so you can't afford to really have one person keep writing bids. So I think to get the levy and have it there where it's just easier to apply for, so we can then go to whoever's facilitating that money and just say, right, okay, we've got this amount of bands we want to put on. If they can cover the artistic costs, then we can obviously relax and diversify our programming and take a few more risks.
So it almost feels, well, nothing's a magic wand, but it could be a very strong answer to that support at the bottom, so that you can focus on some of the more important things rather than just trying to keep the doors open, kind of like we talked about before. How do you feel about the levy and kind of the role of councils and what they're doing with funding at the moment to support music venues? Have you got any?
Well, I think the Music Venue Trust campaign is a fantastic one because all the profits held at the top, but obviously if you don't invest in artists at the start of their career, they're never going to get to the top of their career. So it's a way to, it's an investment really, isn't it, rather than in these venues, rather than looking at it as sort of a levy or a tax. It's, you know, the venues are making a lot of money out of these artists, but they've had to start somewhere, you know. So that, in terms of that ticket levy, I think that's a fantastic idea, and it's a great initiative led by Music Venue Trust. Obviously I'm a great believer in bids. I think they make a massive difference to place making, but I think that's discussed further on. But
Okay. And is there anything that councils and government isn't doing right now that you think they should be? Initiatives? You might be watching, you never know.
Well, I mean, local councils have no money, and that all comes from central government, I suppose, and that does need looking at, because, you know, culture, music venues, all these kind of community hubs that we've got here, that they're all making a massive difference to the place that they're in. They're all making a massive difference to their community, making it happier, healthier, you know. So it's the actual benefits of the music venue in a community are much wider than just helping the artist. It helps the community. So yes, I can always do more, and there's a lot of campaigns at the minute alongside Music Venue Trust that you know the government do need to listen. But you know, there are some fantastic bodies. Arts Council's really, I mean, Arts Council, we're a national portfolio organisation, so we're funded slightly differently, and we're really, really lucky to be able to take risks and chances and be able to support some artists. So it only goes so far. You know, it's people call it funding. Where's it funding? It's, you know, it's an investment. It's anyone else would call it a payment for a contract. That's what you're doing, really. You're delivering a service.
Okay, interesting. So my final question then, around placemaking we've discussed. So we've already talked about the benefit of kind of initiatives like CityCo and kind of what you do to support bringing people to the city, which obviously helps bring people through the door for kind of our events and venues. So placemaking initiatives feel more essential than ever to support cultural communities, sustainability and growth. We've had commercially led initiatives from organisations like Bruntwood, and then GMCA, City of Culture, offering some amazing funding pots to the outer regions within Greater Manchester. And then obviously we've got stuff like CityCo, as I mentioned. Can I ask what your thoughts on this idea of placemaking? Have you had any success engaging with these broader projects, or kind of started your own in any particular way?
So with the A bid now gone live in joint partnership with the Manchester bid, we've been working with a lad called Ollie Wilson, who's Tony Wilson's son. And last year was the launch of Beyond the Music, which has been paid for primarily through the bids. Which has been, so if you remember, those old enough will remember a thing called In the City, which used to be everywhere. So this is kind of a new version of that, really, where we want to use, I think it was like 11 venues we used last year. This year is going to be even bigger.
So it's a music conference and
yeah, so
events.
it's a music conference as events, but at the same time, so we're looking at, say, October, for example, I think it is. We've got, obviously, one of the biggest things that's coming to this city, which is going to be Womex, which is amazing, which is the music conference. And now on the back of that, Beyond the Music will then straight after. So we're almost looking like a month of live music across the city, a full month of it. So we're going to be activating, I think, stages as well in around Exchange Square and all the rest of it. I think we're looking to use, well, Ollie's been pecking my head for various venues details, so I think he's looking to use probably about 20-something venues for the next one eventually, and then having people have the fringe events like in the city used to as well. And there's going to be stuff going on for like a full month across the whole city. Now, one of the things that the bid, the A bid, is looking at is kind of bidding for more conferences and things like that to come here, because what you do is get a lot of fringe events, which benefits quite a lot of businesses all around the whole city, really. Things like when the Brit Awards come and things like that, that's going to be one thing, but you know, things like Womex and coming and being seen on this national stage is what Manchester really needs, you know, to really pump it and make it fully respected. We've already got the musical history here, which I think, you know, no one needs to mention the hacienda, but you know, we've got that history, but what we need to look at is the future of this city. Definitely. And that's what doing things like this and Womex coming in is going to be enormous. Yeah. And how about things you've been up to with Berry? Is it the Berry bid?
Yeah, Berry bid. Just to talk about things like music conferences, though, they make one thing we haven't talked about is like the massive impact that these things make to the economy. It's huge. I can't remember the numbers to do with Womex, but they're enormous, aren't they?
Yeah, so I mean, every hotel is completely booked. Yeah. Every hotel already. It's going to be, October's going to be insane across the city, and live music will be at the forefront of everything. It'll be on, you know, all the social media, it'll be everywhere. Every pretty much most venues, especially around kind of this area, will be laughing their heads, you know, throw a band on. You're going to have music execs from across the world coming to it. So if you're a promoter, start booking things in October around here.
But yeah, equally, each music venue will have an impact on the surrounding area, because people don't just go to that one, that you've got to get there, you know. So it's, you know, there is an impact on it. In terms of the Berry bid, it operates like a bid. In terms of partnership working for cultural venues, that's quite big, actually. Obviously, bids put on events, and cultural venues and music venues kind of help to deliver those. So the impact of working in partnership with bids has been quite good for, well, it's been excellent for Berry. It's made a massive difference so far, and it's only been operating for 2 years.
So these initiatives sound key then?
Yeah, they're brilliant. Yeah.
Okay.
Fully
to bring people back into cities and towns has been, you know, I mean, it's quite weird. So in this city, there's also like, you know, residential bids, which, you know, there's one in Ancoats, you know, which, you know, that's how Ancoats kind of operates, and you know, that's why the streets are clean in Ancoats, because all the residents pay a little thing on top of the council tax to do it. So
you've noticed they look cleaner these days. Yeah. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes left to think, and I'd love to see whether we've not got any questions with anybody in the room today that you'd like to pose to the panellists today. Any questions? Is that half a hand up? Yeah, we've got a microphone just behind you with Ryan.
I'm a newly started promoter, but I've been around the music business for quite a while, and I'm speaking really as a punter, somebody who's been to gigs since I was 15, and I go to too many, 2 or 3 a week, and it seems in terms of the funding model, there are huge investments being made in Aviva, Factory, the new arena, and there's nothing for the smaller venue. There's a huge gulf, and there's nothing really in between. If you took a fraction of the cost, say, of what Aviva cost to build, and put some of that into local venues, that would make a massive difference. So yeah, I'm interested in the levy, but I think it's unfair to actually then get the punters, the people who come to gigs, to actually then pay. It seems the wrong sort of model, and there's this huge gulf between the 20,000 seater and the 100 seater, the Gullivers and the Castle and places like that, and there's nothing really in between. That's government funding. A lot of that on Arts Council funding. Is it being spent appropriately in Manchester?
I think at our level, like 100 capacity and below, gigs should be free. I think we get a lot more people coming out to see bands. Bands would then obviously get more people watching them. So I just think it would work a lot better if all the gigs were free at our level. Unless obviously putting a band on that's just about to break, but then you probably wouldn't apply for funding for that band. So I just think at our level, if we had access to levy money, then we could say, right, yeah, for the next 8 weeks, we want to put on 20 bands that we're going to need, obviously we want to pay them, but we'll make them free so we can get more people in. I think that would definitely help us, because then you've got more people coming to your venue and buying drinks.
And I think there was something that you touched upon before, the whole idea that this levy creates a little bit of a trickle up for those larger venues and events. It's supporting those artists to develop their careers, to then play the larger spaces, so that those audiences have stuff to go to in the future. And it's supporting that industry of kind of event managers who might work their way up kind of in the careers as well, and also supporting creating those habits for music goers to actually go to events. Because I think if we don't have something like this, then there's a risk that even those larger venues will be asking those questions about prosperity and sustainability in the future. So we kind of have to, the urgency is there for us now for the sake of everybody, I think.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, this is why a lot of venues have to rely on the club nights, really, to survive. I mean, with Sound Control, like I said, we had a band that was about to break all the Vamps play, and we had 1,000 people through the door. I had to pay the quite national promoter. They took basically all the ticket money. I took £2.37 on the bar, and considering none of my drinks added up to that amount, I'm not sure where that money came from, but I took £2.37 on the bar for 1,000 people through. I had doormen, I had staff, I had lighting technicians, sound technicians, and it's like, oh my God, this has just cost us so much money. But we had 1,000 young people. I mean, granted, they were all mental, screaming, throwing Jaffa cakes everywhere, but we had thousands of men who came to that venue, will remember it for the rest of their lives, which was absolutely amazing. But in order for them to do that, I had to have a club night that night called Bass Face, which was, you can probably imagine what it was like, and I took 20 grand on that, and all of a sudden that has now paid to allow me to do the magical things like that. The problem is with a lot of live music, I remember we had a gig, London Grammar played, and I mean, in Salford we had this Alcon Ribbon sound system, and her voice through that sound system, you could hear a pin drop. It was magical. For the entire time, because I did a till reading, where they were on stage, I took nothing, not a penny. I mean, during the front acts, fine, they were drinking pints, but the second her voice, it was like a church. It was just that absolute, I took absolutely nothing. But we had London Grammar at the venue, and it was just like, oh my God, these are amazing. It's like, but I needed the club nights to do that, unfortunately. So
that's another way we measure success as well. Having that band on that breaks as well. Getting that band on.
Oh yeah, like Gabrielle Applin, she played the tiny little room and then the bigger room, and she kept coming back, and then she went to the Ritz and was like, right, see you later then. But we'd never take a lot of money, but it just got so much more press and so much more anything. But in order for us to do that, especially when you're dealing with a lot of national promoters who would take quite a large cut of what the ticket money was, I would rely, because there wasn't really the grants for us then or any funding. So
different time.
I think as well, because you directly mentioned Aviva Studios, and I am gonna try and think about what I'm saying here, But Bruntwood sponsored the stage at Factory International, the opening stage. One of the bands I look after played that stage. So I'm very aware that there's a lot of different nuances to that. But I think in Manchester, yes, it is great to have these big conferences here. It's great to have these big venues. But I think we should really be asking, when we have the property developers sponsoring the new stages, where are young people going to make music? We can sit here and say, oh, they're on their phones, they're easily distracted. Like, I don't know how much everybody paid to go to uni, but for me it was $3,000. They are not paying that, they're paying $9,000. Where are young people going to go with their friends and pick up a guitar and start messing around with drums? Because a lot of the spaces people used to do that are gone. So I don't think having free gigs is great, and creating those, getting people into the spaces is great, but to like directly address that particular thing, I think we really need to think about the impact we are having on our city and on the younger generation by only investing in a certain type of space, because where are things going to be made? And then for the grassroots music venues, the people coming up through them, like, we're not going to host a big touring person at the old Abbey Taphouse, not because we're not ambitious or anything, but because we probably can't get to the technical rider that they need to be there. And a lot of the people that come through our doors that we speak to and we have in there every day, especially the young people, they don't have a lot of spaces to go anymore. So I think we should all be deeply considering where is the money going and who's it being spent on as well. And I've got 6 little brothers and sisters, so I'm quite like defensive about young people. But I think we need to think as widely and holistically as we can about how to engage them with music and how to create spaces for them too.
Yeah.
But also on a serious note with levies and grants and things like that, there are some phenomenal operators out there. There are some bad ones as well. And it's the bad ones that can make it bad for everybody, really, because, I remember during lockdown, whenever the grants started coming through, and one bar I know, he bought a Ferrari. Never had, and he was literally, I've never had more money in my bank, ever, in his life. He's furloughed his staff, he got his rent for free, because he had a great landlord. Never had more money, gone bump now. He came back, didn't have a clue, but he just started taking the money. So it's about using that money and using it wisely. I don't know if you've seen, it's a bit old now, but the Band on the Wall refurb and what they've done, what they've created upstairs is absolutely fantastic. And all this. So with the club down there, we'd always open it up to like BIM and places like that. Because you just get them young kids in, just come and do stuff. But like I say, I'd have to rely on club nights all the time to pay that way, and the problem is like that's how you got the issue obviously at night and day, because they need the club nights, all of them club nights.
I think it's really interesting, because I think we're kind of coming to the end, that we're ending on this idea of supporting kind of young people, of coming into the industry, not as audiences, but also as music makers as well. So the answer to support isn't just about getting audiences through the door, is helping those creators as well, kind of, which it sounds like you're all doing, which is kind of absolutely wonderful, but more can be done. So I think that's everything today. So thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Every time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either.